If you're feeling like it's becoming harder and harder to make ends meet financially right now, and if you feel like somehow you're struggling more now than you were a few years ago, I want you to know that it's not just you, and tons of people are feeling this way right now. In the last few years, inflation has skyrocketed while wages have stagnated. And what this means is that a lot of hard working class people are finding themselves struggling financially because the cost of living has increased at a significantly faster pace than wages have increased. So if in your job in the last few years you've been given the standard 3% raise, you haven't actually been given a raise in the last few years. In reality, you've lost purchasing power dollar for dollar because inflation has increased at a greater rate than your wages have increased. Your 3% raise just simply hasn't kept up with how much your cost of living has increased over the last few years. And honestly, this really sucks in a world where it feels like it costs money just to step outside your door each day. You also might be feeling that it feels like you're the only one who's struggling right now. When you look around at your peers, your friends, your family, it feels like everyone else is living a much larger, more financially secure life than you are. And I can promise you that this is almost definitely not the case, but the reason that it feels this way is because our debt financing is at an all-time high. It used to be that if you wanted to buy something, you had to save up your money and you had to buy that outright in cash. Now we can debt finance almost anything. We can debt finance daily consumer purchases like clothing or ordering a pizza. And what this has done is it's had the effect of completely warping our view and our understanding of what middle class earners can actually afford to have. So it looks like everyone around you is affording all of these things, and it makes it feel like they must be doing better than you. But the truth is they're probably debt financing it, whether that's with repayment schemes or credit cards or personal lines of credit, you name it. You can find a way to finance it. So I just want you to know that it's not just you. Inflation is making day-to-day living so much harder for all of us. And it is very important, if you want to get through these next few months or potentially years without going nuts, that you stop comparing yourself to people who are very likely debt financing their lives. That is not what you want to do. You don't want to go down that route. Instead, you're going to want to follow these 6 tips, some of which are going to make a huge difference in your life right away, and all of which are going to serve you really well financially in the long run. Tip number 1, the very first thing that you are going to do to combat inflation is to work on increasing your salary. That means that you are going to learn how to negotiate and you're going to go ask for a raise. So I know asking for a raise can be scary, but just hear me out about this. I read a survey that said that 70% of the people who ask for a raise get that raise. 70%. That's pretty good, right? Now, the same study also showed that 2/3 of people never ask for a raise. 2/3 of people. And to me, that's really interesting because that means that only 1/3 of people ever ask for a raise. And of that 1/3, 70% of them are likely to get that raise. And if you ask me, that makes a pretty clear and pretty compelling case to going to ask for a raise. So this is the first thing that you're going to want to do in a high inflation environment. You're going to want to work on increasing your income. A lot of people think, this means starting a side hustle. Maybe it does. But the first thing that you want to do is ask for that raise, right? Start with who's already paying you, who's already invested you, who wants to keep you working for them. Tip number 2 to combat inflation also has to do with negotiation, but this time you're going to go in and you're going to negotiate down your bills, your subscriptions, and your recurring payments. There are so many types of recurring payments that you can renegotiate, and companies don't want to give you their best rate right off the bat, right? That's just not how they work. So this means that it's up to you to go in and negotiate what you want to pay for the service that you're getting from them. You can negotiate things like your phone and internet bills, your car insurance premiums, even your credit card interest rates. Now, before you do this, I have an entire episode of the How to Adult show dedicated to how to negotiate bills. You'll find some scripts in there for how you can approach it, some tips if you're nervous going into it, because most of us aren't used to negotiating. Like, it's not a comfortable place for anyone to be necessarily, so you're not alone in that. Go check out that episode of the How to Adult show before you try this. I will also link that down in the description for you. And honestly, just give it a try. Tip number 3 is to get in the habit of tracking your expenses so you know where every single dollar of your money is going right now. And you're going to use that information to learn what it is that you value spending money on and what expenses you currently have right now that you can just happily let go of without feeling like you're really missing out on anything. If you're feeling like you're struggling to make ends meet and you can't currently tell me exactly where every single dollar of your money goes, then this is hands down the very first thing that you're going to want to take a look at doing. So I have tons and tons of episodes of the How to Adult Show about, how to track your expenses, walking you through my expense tracking system, talking about values-based spending. I have an entire course about expense tracking and values-based spending if you really want to dive into the nitty-gritty of it. Keep in mind what we're talking about today is temporary things that you can do to relieve the financial pressure that you might be feeling right now because of inflation. Inflation isn't going to always be like this, right? This is something that will change. It evolves over time, but it does suck right now. And this is going to relieve that pressure that you're feeling temporarily while you go work on some of the bigger ticket items like asking for that raise. Tip number 4 is to not spend too much time focusing on controlling your little expenses. So absolutely go do your expense tracking exercise, cut out the low-lying fruit expenses right away. That's going to make your life easier. But don't spend all of your time focusing on these little expenses rather than looking at the big 3 expense categories in your life, namely where you live, your transportation, and your taxes. Taxes are the single biggest expense category that any Canadian family has, and you need to learn how to minimize your tax burden, how to lower your tax bill if you actually want to move ahead with saving money in your life. So before you spend all night sitting down to make up a detailed meal plan of how you're going to eat out of your freezer and buy things on sale and cook all Mexican food this week so that you only have to buy this set of ingredients, before you focus on the minutia of carving up your grocery budget like that, you need to sit down and learn how the Canadian tax system works and what systems are in place to allow you to reduce your tax burden and keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket. So make sure you take time to take a really good look at these big expense categories. Don't let yourself gloss over these expense categories just because you told yourself that you're going to commit to making coffee at home every day this month. That's great if you decide to do that, but that's not going to save you anywhere near the amount of money that you'll save by learning how to manage your taxes, looking at your vehicle costs, and looking at your housing costs. Tip number 5 is going to help you feel so much safer in the face of vastly increasing costs due to inflation, stagnating wages, and kind of a rocky job market, and that's to finally build yourself a proper emergency fund. If you have been struggling to fill up your emergency fund for years, now is the time that you're going to want to commit to making some temporary changes to your lifestyle to save money and divert all of that extra money you're saving straight towards your emergency fund, okay? This is a priority right now. And finally, tip number 6 is to postpone any big ticket purchases for a while. So in this category, I'm specifically talking about buying a home, renovating a home, or buying a vehicle. These are all items where the cost of these services and these items has vastly outpaced inflation in the last few years because of supply chain issues and labor shortages. So inflation has been high, but the cost of these things has been even higher. And these costs will drop down again, right? Everything will normalize in the market. The good news is that overall, this intense cycle of inflation will level out. But that doesn't mean that you just have to ride it out and go into debt and hope for the best. And above all, I just really want you to remember that you're doing a good job. This isn't easy for anybody. Rising costs of living at a rate like this are really, really hard to manage from a financial budgeting perspective for your life. So just keep on working, work on applying the 6 tips that are in this video. If you have any other tips or ideas, drop them down in the comments below. And I hope to see you back around here next Monday when I release a new episode of the How to Adult Show.